there. I got it.
Okay, cool. I haven't made mine big yet. There we go.
Okay, so hello and welcome to our December edition of Family Support Night. I'm Darcy Ladwig, and that is Shelly back right over there. Shelly Gakitsana. And we are so honored to have our special guests, Lewis Mendoza and Jeremy Kredlo from the Washington State Fathers Network, to share their training of telling your story with a purpose. And I think we're the first time they've done it in this format, in the Zoom format, if I'm not mistaken.
No, not in the Zoom format, but in this shortened version.
Shortened version. So it's a great training. I've been through the full course of it, and so I think you'll get a lot out of it. And I'll just turn it over to you guys. Do you need share capabilities or?
Yeah, I just tried sharing and it said that the host had turned it off. So if you want to give me that capability.
Done.
Are you doing that, Shelly?
Yeah, it's done.
Okay.
I did it.
All right.
Let's see. I should have it now?
Yep.
Okay, let's 1 second. What's happening? Here we go. Okay, can you see my PowerPoint now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. Well, welcome everyone. This is the this is Telling Your Story with a Purpose workshop. And as Darcy mentioned before, this is normally a longer workshop. It's usually about 4 hours long. And we haven't done it in this 90-minute format before. So Jeremy's timing and my timing might be a little bit off, but we will make it work as best we can. What you won't get for the most part, the big chunks that you won't get will be the opportunity to actually take time to develop a story and develop how you would want to present your story, as well as the opportunity to practice with each other and receive feedback and coaching. But other than that, the general information is the same. And we're just going to give it a shot and see how it goes. We would invite you to ask questions as we go along. There may be a need to move us along if we start getting into a really good conversation, knowing that we have a limited time frame to just say, sorry, but this is a good conversation, but we need to move on. But just to give you a sense of who we are, I am, as Darcy mentioned, I'm Lewis Mendoza. I manage the Washington State Fathers Network, whose primary mission, we've been around since 1978, and our primary work is to connect men who have children with special needs with other men in that same situation. Because stereotypically, and I know there are exceptions to this, men are not the greatest at asking for help. And so they can get themselves a little bit isolated and feeling like there's nobody who knows what they're going through. And so we try to provide opportunities for them to connect through support groups, as well as through social activities, some of which are for just for men and others that are for families. We also try to find opportunities for men to have their voices heard about what it's like to raise a child with special needs. And as part of that effort, we do this training. So we always look for men and women to attend this workshop so they can learn about advocacy and how to tell their story effectively. Jeremy, you want to say a few words about who you are?
Sure. Thanks, Liz. My name's Jeremy Kredlo. I'm the grandfather and custodial guardian of Kylie Hartke, who is now 12 years old, unbelievably. And she suffered significant brain damage at birth from a loss of oxygen, and I've been her primary caregiver since she was 8 months old. I do a significant amount of volunteer work throughout the disabilities community. This workshop with Lewis as a helping parent through the Arc of King County, where I act as a mentor and support for other parents with children with similar medical conditions or who have similar life circumstances and who may be kind of early on in the journey. And I am a storyteller as well as my passion, if not my trade. So this particular training is near and dear to my heart because it blends a few of the things that I really love together.
All right. Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I said, and somebody's at my door. My doorbell's ringing. Just before I go and check that, I just put a few items in the chat. Those are downloads for the PowerPoint presentation that you're looking at. There is a WSLI consent form that Lewis will talk about later, but that you may want to have available. There are handouts and worksheets that you may find helpful both during the workshop and then after the workshop as you're working on crafting your story. And then there is a SurveyMonkey link that'll take you to an evaluation, a post-training evaluation. And if you could click on that and give us your open and honest feedback on what you did or didn't get out of the training, that would be super helpful as we continue to refine this and make it better and better for every group that we help teach.
Okay, so you're gonna go check the door? We'll see you in a minute. So what we are hoping to accomplish tonight is to be able to present to you a process that you can use to select a story, a personal story about you and or your family that would accompany an ask that you want to make regarding a policy or systems change. And to be able to do that presentation, tell that story to somebody in a position to make a decision, to somebody who can actually do something about what you want to have happen, and to do that presentation in 2 to 3 minutes, because sometimes that's all you have. If you go to, let's say, the legislature and you present, say on a panel, they have a light system, and when that red light goes off, your time is up, and it's about 3 minutes. And there are other situations also where you'll be timed, and so being able to do it in that short of a time frame is really important. And I'll be honest, this is that piece, that 2 to 3 minute piece, is the hardest piece for the people who go through this workshop to handle. Any parent, but especially in our case, parents who have kids with special healthcare needs, have experienced so much. They have so much to talk about, so much to say, so much that they want to share, so many experiences that lead into talking about other experiences, that it's really easy for them to get off on a tangent, and they'll begin to tell their story and it'll make them think of something else, and they go down a rabbit hole and they can't get back within the time frame that they have. So having the focus to know exactly what it is you want to ask for, the story that applies to that ask, and do it in that 3 minute time limit is just really critical. So that's what we hope to accomplish, is to give you that overview, that big picture of the process. As far as an agenda for this evening, we're doing this piece now where we're kind of giving the overview. Jeremy is going to talk in a few minutes about what makes a good story. We're also going to give you a big picture overview of the process that we'll talk about, and then we'll actually get into actually talking about the process. And we'll show you some videos of people telling their story so you can see what it looks like. And then we'll talk about those, debrief them, talk about what you like, what you didn't like, what could have been done better. And then we'll talk about the actual worksheets that we usually walk people through. Jeremy included them in the attachment that he talked about in the chat. You can take them and open them up and use them tonight, or you can just follow along with what we're talking about. But that's basically the agenda, is to get you through that point where you've seen the worksheets, you know all the steps that we would want you to follow when you actually do your presentation, and then we'll wrap it up. And we promise we won't go past 7:30. We'll see if we end early, I don't know, but we won't go past 7:30 just to honor your time. As far as logistics, as I mentioned before, please ask questions as we go. Also, as I mentioned before, be respectful of the agenda. We may have to cut conversations short if we're running out of time. Take care of your personal needs, including children or other members of the family, pets, whatever that you have to take care of. We know that that's often necessary. And we may be talking about things that might be confidential about you or your family. And so we would just ask that you respect everybody and keep the conversation tonight to yourself. Although you're not recording it, so maybe, I don't know if that applies or not. So let's get started. Any questions at this point before we move on? Okay, so Jeremy, I believe you're up.
I am. I was just responding to something in the chat.
Okay.
Okay, so Darcy, it seems like, looks like you're seeing them. Okay. So what is a story with a purpose? In context of this particular training, what we're talking about is a short presentation based on your experience with your children, or your child's experience themselves, that you're using to advocate for policies or systems level change in a way that is both effective and memorable. So something that is an experience that you have had, an experience that you have shared with your child about something that isn't working the way that it should work or needs to be fixed or improved in terms of a policy or a law, and something that you can not only share, but share in a way that makes the decision maker feel what you felt in that moment. That's what we mean when we say memorable, something that is going to have that person really think about what it is that you're imparting. And we do that through this training and through this format that we're going to talk about in a way that really focuses less on data and less on graphs and charts and statistics, and much more on feelings and emotion and making a connection with the person that you're talking to. The focus of that really are, systems, process, and policy changes, laws, potentially funding for new programs or an existing program, some of the different things that you might be advocating for. Louis, you want to move on to the next slide? Why? Why a story instead of data or an argument or a charts or graphs or statistics? Mostly because really what you want to do is get this decision maker on your side. When you hear data, when you hear statistics, our natural inclination is to start poking holes in it, to start looking for reasons why we don't agree, or logical fallacies, or those things that really just don't seem like something that we can get behind. Whereas if you are told a good story, if somebody shares an experience with you through their words, you often find yourself getting drawn into that experience and living it alongside them, feeling that emotional connection and understanding what they felt in that moment. It creates empathy and it creates connection. Those stories invite us to identify with and support the speaker. A lot of our stories are very vulnerable. There are things that we talk about that many people haven't experienced. And when we talk about them with vulnerability and emotion, a lot of times it will create a sympathetic or an empathetic connection that makes people want to do what needs to be done. One of the things we're going to talk about quite a bit is the format. And we're going to talk about this because this is counterintuitive. A lot of times whether it's in school or out of school, we've been taught to stick to a specific format, and that format a lot of times has what we're asking for at the very end of the presentation that we're giving. There's a big reveal, or we want to wait to tell somebody what we want from them until after we've kind of buttered them up, for lack of a better term, after we've kind of set the stage. We're going to ask you not to do that. We're going to ask you to follow a very specific format and for some very specific reasons. Now, format is to start out with an introduction, tell them who you are, and thank them for something they've already done. That something they've already done can be as simple as, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today. I know you're busy. Something they've already done can be something that you researched. But start out with that. You're creating a feeling of goodwill from the very beginning, because you not only recognize but acknowledge the fact they are doing you a favor and done some good work in the past. After that, make a connection with them through some common ground. If it's a legislator, maybe you're in their legislative district, you can use that. If they have sponsored a bill in the past that is you consider to be beneficial to your child or others in the community or whatever it happens to be, you can make a connection to that. One of the examples we use, if you're a veteran and they happen to have been a veteran, just something that lets them know that you are in the same group. Make that connection somehow. Sometimes you might have to do research to find what that is, but invest in the time to do that research because it will pay dividends. State your request at the beginning. Let them know why they're there. We do that because we want the thinking about that ask the whole time. We want them to know what it is you're there for, so that when you tell your story, they will understand why that story is important and how what you're asking them for could potentially make things better. Tell a personal story, preferably a moving personal story that directly relates to what you're asking them for. We all have a lot of stories. We all have, those of us who have children with disabilities have so many things that we could focus on. Find a story that directly relates to your request and something that is powerful and moving if you can find that. After you tell your personal story, explain why what you're asking for is important and beneficial. It seems redundant, but decision makers are often removed from some of the consequences of those decisions. Some of those decision makers won't see right away how funding program that you want funded is going to make things better for you, for this personal situation that you shared in that story. Explain that to them. Let them know. Connect the dots for them. Don't ask them to connect dots themselves. After that, thank them again. Really appreciate your time meeting with us today, meeting with me today. Really appreciate all that you've done in the past. Then reiterate the request. Use different words if you need to, but make sure that the last thing that you do before you walk away from that podium, walk out of their office, or whatever it happens to be, is leave them with very clear communication on what it is you want them to do. So there's no ambiguity, there's no confusion. They know exactly what you want from them and why you want it. And that is my time on that. Any questions on the format?
All right, thank you. At this point, I'm going to show you a couple of videos of people telling their story. And as you watch them, I'd like you to keep in mind this format, all these steps that Jeremy's talked about, and see how they do in covering all these steps. So I'm going to show you a video of a woman named Dana. At the end of her video, she will also, there's a little ending video where she talks about her approach to telling her story. And then I'll show you a video of Jeremy telling his story. And after that, then talk about them. So here we go.
Hi, I'm Dana Bertinentis. I'm from Seattle, and I have two children, Aurelia, who's 5 years old and is typically developing, and Mason, who's 6.5 and has an autism diagnosis. I'm here to talk to you today about our parks. I would love for the Seattle Department of Parks and Recreation to convene a panel of stakeholders from the disabled community, parents, kids with special needs, disabled self-advocates, kids themselves, to evaluate our parks and determine whether they're places that are truly accessible or if there are barriers to play. And if those barriers exist, make some suggestions about how we can fix that. Kids with disabilities and kids with special complicated healthcare needs have very busy, full schedules. They've got school, they're typically developing peers, and then they've got therapy appointments and medical appointments like speech therapy, occupational therapy, visits to the doctor. They're busy, hardworking children. And when they finally get a break, their local park or community center just might not be a place that they go and play. And you know, play is the work of childhood, as Mr. Rogers teaches us. Play is not just a privilege or a special treat, it's a right and a really crucial developmental need for kids. I saw this with my own son when he had a huge speech erosion at age 2 and went from a 50-word vocabulary to just being able to say mama and dada. And through 6 months of outdoor speech therapy, he got all his words back and was able to speak in complete sentences and now communicates perfectly well with absolutely everyone. I think that access to play with our entire community. Typically developing children should go to the park and be able to see all of their friends and neighbors represented. They should be able to see children in wheelchairs. They should be able to see kids with Down syndrome all playing together. I think this will benefit our elderly population. This will benefit disabled adults who have children and want to take them to the park to play. This is a benefit that will really help us all. So with that in mind, I would encourage the Department of Parks and Recreation to evaluate our parks, to incorporate some stakeholders who really have some great insight about how we can make our parks more accessible and ensure that these are places that everyone can play and enjoy. When I'm advocating for my son, or even for myself, and trying to make a change, I think about my mom, who's from Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and says you get more flies with honey than you do with vinegar, which I really think means just that you've got to make someone want to help you. I don't want someone to help me because they're guilted into it. I don't want them to help me because they feel bad. I think that's really limiting, and I think that prevents them from using that as a jumping off point for further assistance and advocacy. I think it's important to really convince someone that they're going to be on the side of good. I think it's important to phrase a request in a way that's it's something that they can do, and it's something that's going to feel good for them to do, so they want to do it again. I think there's that phrase, there's no zealot like a convert, right? I don't want to browbeat someone into joining my mission. I want them to really be converted, to really believe what we're trying to change, and to join me in doing it as a partner.
Hi, my name is Jeremy Kredlo. I'm here from Washington. I'm the grandfather and custodial guardian of Kylie, who's a beautiful 8-year-old young lady who happened to suffer massive brain damage at birth. I wanted to start out by thanking you for your strong advocacy work in helping to sponsor and get approved the Syndrome Information Act in the 2016 legislative session. And I'm here to ask you to capitalize on that work and to help even more children by expanding the diagnosis list to include any children with intellectual or developmental disabilities. I raised 2 daughters as a single father, and I thought that was hard, and I didn't know anything. When Kylie came to live with me at 8 months old,
I'm sorry, I stopped it because Shelley in the chat was saying there's no video showing. There's no video?
I don't have a video.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's try again. Huh. Okay, so you can see my PowerPoint at this point?
Correct.
Okay. Trying to think of why the video wouldn't be showing.
Are you sharing on a different screen, Louis?
I don't think so, but let's try. I lost the commands. There we go. Hang on. Oh. Okay, hang on. Share.
In the meantime, has anybody been able to download any of the things from any of the attachments?
I got them all. So when you click download, it takes it to a save file on your computer. Click save, and then back in the chat, there's a new box that pops up that says open file. And then when I clicked open, I was able to open them.
Hi, I'm Dana Pertinitis. I'm from Seattle, and I have.
Are you guys?
Now we're seeing your desktop with Windows Explorer, and you're telling your story Outlook room.
Okay, hang on. I think I know what's wrong.
Just when we think we have it all figured out, right? And then I can't figure out myself.
Okay, let's try this again. Tell me what's happening.
You're clicking.
I'm from Seattle, and I have 2.
Can you see this?
No.
Mr.
So
Desktop.
is it showing up on a screen other than the one that you have with Windows Explorer on?
Yes.
Okay. You need to share your other screen. The screen you're sharing now, you need to either share your other screen or you need to move the video over to the monitor that has the telling your story for purpose for artists. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Message on it.
Let's try again. Sorry, guys. This has never happened before.
It's something in session I've ever been in. And I'm in. So,
Okay, stop share.
Hi, I'm Dana Pertinitis.
Is that working now?
No.
No.
If you can click on the screen that it's showing on yours, then stop sharing your screen and then reshare it and click directly on the one that's paused. If that makes sense, that might take it right there.
So I've stopped sharing. And
When you share again, if you're able to click directly on the video that you see on your desktop,
yeah,
then it should,
unfortunately,
but who knows?
I'm gonna try to.
Also, Lewis, I actually went 10 minutes under my time. I had 20 minutes instead of 10, so I totally blazed through that, and I made up 10 minutes. Pretty much right on scale right now.
I
So
only have a couple minutes, so
I will agree with that.
This is very valuable too, because we're going to be doing a lot of our conversations on Zoom.
yeah. Well, like I said, this is I've always been able to share this successfully before, so not quite sure what's happening. Share screen to.
Okay, we're seeing your screen, the same screen we've been seeing.
Okay.
With,
So you're seeing the PowerPoint. You're seeing the.
sorry, we're seeing the screen where you are currently moving your mouse right over Advanced Story. We're seeing that whole screen with your Windows background and Windows Explorer and.
Yeah. Okay. Share. And that is saying that that's screen number 2. I'm screen number 2. Here's the video.
Yeah, is the video open on
Hi,
screen
I'm
too?
Mendoza. I'm from Seattle, and I have children, Aurelia, who's 5 years
That's not working.
It is not.
Oh man, I have no idea what I'm doing wrong.
All right. Hey, who's the host? I have
Who's the host? You guys are muted.
If somebody makes me a co-host, I might be able to share. I have a few as well.
Okay, you are.
Okay, let me give that a try. That's all right.
Yes. I have it.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Jeremy, thank you.
Yes, we'll go from there, and then I'll flip it back to you.
Do you have your video also? We need to show your video.
I do. So let me.
Okay. Do them back to back.
And you guys are both co-hosts now, so you won't have to switch anything between the two of you. You can both take a meet.
Okay.
Perfect. All right, we'll give this a try. Ready?
There's no audio.
Oh, we're so close. No audio. All right. That is not helpful.
Is that your screen we're seeing of the facilitators guide?
It is.
Okay.
Audio is on my side, and I'm not on mute, so not. Oh, it's because the audio is going through my speakers, not. I need to change the Zoom setting side. Things just keep getting curiouser and curiouser. All right. Looking for Zoom settings that would possibly help with this. All right, let's try that.
and I have 2 children. Aurelia is 5 years old and is typically developing.
Okay, pro tip. If you're using your computer sound for video, there's a little option up there that says computer sound. You know, more options. So, all right, and we're off.
Hi, I'm Dana Martinez. I'm from Seattle, and I have 2 children. Aurelia, who's 5 years old and is typically developing, and Mason, who's 6.5 and has an autism diagnosis. I'm here to talk today about our parks. I would love for the Seattle Department of Parks and Recreation to convene a panel of stakeholders from the disabled community, parents of kids with special needs, disabled advocates, kids themselves, to evaluate our parks and determine whether they're places that are truly accessible or if there are barriers to play. And if those barriers exist, make some suggestions about how we can fix that. Kids with disabilities and kids with special complicated healthcare needs have very busy, full schedules. They've got school, like they're typically developing youth, and then they've got therapies and medical appointments like speech therapy, occupational therapy, visits to the doctor. They're just busy working children. And when they finally get a break, their little park or community center might be a place that they can go and play. And play is the word of childhood, as Mr. Ross teaches us. Play is not just a privilege or a special treat, it's a right and a really crucial developmental need for kids. I saw this with my own son when he had huge speech progression at age 2 and went from a figure of vocabulary to just being able to sing like that. And for 6 months of outdoor speech therapy, he got all his words back and was able to speak in complete sentences and now communicates perfectly well with absolutely everyone. I think that access to play will benefit the entire community. Typically, developing children to go to the park and be able to see all of their friends and neighbors represented. They should be able to see children, just to be able to see kids with Down syndrome all playing together. I think for our elderly population, this will benefit disabled adults who have children and want to take the park to play. This is a benefit that will really help us all. So with that in mind, I would encourage the Seattle Department of Parks and Recreation to evaluate our parks, to stakeholders who really have some great insight about how we can make our parks more accessible and ensure that these are places that everyone can play and enjoy.
That part of the video was Adina telling her story. This part is her explaining her approach on the story.
When I'm advocating for my son, or even for myself, and trying to make a change, I think about my mom, who's from Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and says you get flies with honey than you do with vinegar, which I think means just that you got to make someone want to help you. I don't want someone to help me because they're guilted into it. I don't want them to help me because they feel bad. I think that's really limiting, and I think that prevents them from using that as a jumping off point for further assistance and advocacy. I think it's important to really convince someone that they're going to be on the side of good. I think it's important to phrase your request in a way that's something that they can't, something that feel good for them to do, so they want to again. I think there's phrases, don't sell it like a convert, right? I don't want to rally someone into joining my mission. I want them to really be committed, to really believe in what we're trying to change, to join me in doing it as a partner.
Hi, my name is Jeremy Kredlo. I'm here from Kent, Washington. I'm the grandfather and custodial guardian of Kylie, who's a beautiful 8-year-old young lady who has suffered massive brain damage at birth. I'm going to start out by thanking you for your strong advocacy work in helping to sponsor and get approved the Down Syndrome Information Act in the 2016 legislative session. And I'm here to ask you to capitalize on that work and to help even more by expanding the diagnosis to include any children with intellectual or developmental disabilities. I raised 2 daughters as a single father, and I thought that was hard, and I didn't know anything. When Kylie came to live with me at 8 months old, I realized raising a child with significant disabilities was exponentially harder. I balanced so many different medical and therapy activities above and beyond my full-time job and spending time with Kylie that I am completely exhausted all the time, and I don't have time, and I can't make time for research. When Kylie was first born, she suffered a loss of oxygen that resulted in hypoxic encephalopathy, which is global brain damage, and seizures, and cerebral palsy, and a number of mental lesions. When she was a year old, I took her to Riley Children's Hospital for a series of tests. We were there for days, and on day 3 we saw a pediatric ophthalmologist. And he did a series of tests. I remember sitting in the waiting room when he came out, with Kylie in my lap, and he said, Kylie has 100% cortical impairment. It is a combination of massive scarring on her optic nerves from the extended loss of oxygen and severe damage to the brain tissue in her occipital lobes, which is the center of the brain that translates the images from the eyes to the brain itself. She will never be able to see, including light or and they left. And that was the extent of the information that I was given. I sat in his waiting room, tears rolling down my face, and Kylie in my arms, until I was able to gather myself up and move on to her next of many appointments. And I thought, in that time, about how much I would have to learn, how much I would have to research, how much I didn't know about what it would be like to raise a child blind. Where do I even start? And it was months before I was able to actually get anything put together for her, and years before she was involved in regular vision therapy. And I'm still fighting that battle today. Kylie and so many other children like her benefit so much if their parents were given access to resources, support groups, therapies, the information that they need to be able to get their child as much help as early as possible. If those resources were given to them at time of diagnosis. I want to thank you again for what you've already done, for all of the strong work you've done in advocating for children with Down syndrome. And I will challenge you to keep capitalizing on that strong work by expanding that diagnosis list to help other children, those with other intellectual and developmental disabilities. Thank you very much.
All right, that's it. Sharing has stopped. Over to you, Louis. You are on mute, sir.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I thank you for hopping in there, Jeremy, and showing the videos. I know that at least for me and Shelley, and I assume for other people, the audio and the video weren't quite matching, so apologize for that. But this is the format that you do for each of the videos, and I asked you to watch the videos thinking about this format and how well the video presenters covered these points. So I'm just curious now, how do you think they did? Let's talk about Adana's video first. Do you think she did a good job of covering all these points?
I think she did, Mrs. Darcy. I think she hit on all of them.
Any particular things you think she did really well?
What was that, Josie?
I was just saying, I felt that she was personable. She, everything that I think it was either Jeremy or Louis I touched on about, she talked about her mom, she talked about her kid. She just seemed very personable and approachable, I guess, where you listen to her story. If that makes sense.
Oh, that's a good point. What do you think she was asking for? What did she ask?
Well, what I got from it was she wanted access, for her child to be able to go to parks and playgrounds, and I should have taken notes, but that's basically what I got. Is you wanted to be able to have access, after long days of therapy and school, and that it would be nice for her child to be all children. So that's what I got from it too. Is it wasn't just an ask for just her child; it was for all children, for it to be inclusive. And to be able to have that downtime, to be a child, that to be able to play.
Yeah, that's an important distinction, because if you had only gotten that she was her child, that's a lot different than what we're asking you to think about, because that's a personal advocacy as opposed to a systems change. So what else did people get out of her app? What was she asking for? Anybody have a difference of opinion?
I thought she only asked for an evaluation of the parks.
Yeah, I believe what she asked for was to have the Parks and Recreation Department develop or establish a panel of shareholders
Mhm.
who were parents or people with disabilities, including children, to look at the accessibility of Seattle parks. The reason that I asked that question is that it's really important that you're really, really clear as much as possible. And obviously, she thought she was being clear. We had two people with a difference of opinion as to what she was asking for. And so it is very possible that as clear as you try to be, someone's gonna come away with a different idea of what you're asking for than what you think you asked for. And so it's just really important to always think through, how can I make this as simple and clear as possible? One of
Did
the
she
things we
ask for a partner? She said something I thought towards the end about she wants partners in her request.
Stakeholders.
Yeah.
yeah, I
Is
think
At the end, she said, I would encourage the Seattle Department of Parks and Recreation to evaluate our parks to incorporate some stakeholders who really have some great insight about how we can make our parks more accessible and ensure that these are places that everyone can play and enjoy.
Which one thing does not include the budget and the other does.
Correct.
yeah. So it's let's ask another question. Do you think there's more she could have said? She actually did her presentation in about 2 minutes. So we have that 2 to 3 minute time frame. Is there anything else that you think she should have added or clarified? And there's no right or wrong answer here. I'm just curious. She had extra time. Could she have used it for something, or did it feel good to you the way it was?
I almost feel like I'd have to listen to it again. Because, I
Okay.
mean, it stood out that she wanted, access for kids of all abilities, access to the parks and playgrounds. But I guess maybe I didn't come away from what she wants that to look like.
Okay.
I think she should have included actual monetary
Yeah.
ask of then put into motion to make those changes to actually make the park accessible.
So maybe,
When you say the
Maybe
monitor,
she wanted to ask. I mean, what her intent was. Maybe her intent was just to get the ball rolling with the evaluation, and then we'll go from there. Here's when we have another budget session. I don't know.
yeah, well, that's an important point. She needed to be clear about what she really wanted, and if she wanted to ask, I'd like to see the Park and Recreation Department spend X amount of dollars in order to do this. She didn't do that, and maybe someone would want that information. But from what I know of this presentation, she was really just asking you to get the ball rolling, and to see what the evaluation would show, and then there would be some future study to figure out the cost to implement the recommendations.
This is Darcy, and I would just add, we weren't the intended audience, so I would assume that maybe they would have some background information, but if they didn't, then it would probably come across as missing something like we had. But it could have been a city council meeting where a lot of people were speaking to this issue, so it's hard to know yeah.
It's a good point. One of the things that we talk about in this workshop is that it's oftentimes important to research who it is you're talking to and what do they know about what it is you're going to talk about. And if they don't know a lot, then you have to find some way to give information that would be helpful to them to understand what it is you're talking about and what it is you need. So yeah, that's a good point, Darcy. Thank you. There was a part in her presentation when she talked about her son and how at a certain point in his life he stopped talking. And then by playing and interacting with other kids and being on the playgrounds, he somehow got his word back. Did that seem like it was helpful? Did it seem confusing? Did it seem out of place? Well, how did you react to that? Or do you remember that part?
I do. I remember it. I connected with it because I think what I got from what she was trying to relate with how it was important for her child to be around other children of all different abilities, and that it showed growth. He showed growth from being able to interact with other kids. So yeah, I connected with that.
Okay, good. I bring it up because not everybody does. When they see the video, they kind of wonder why I put that in there. But
Well, this is Debbie, and it connected with me because that's exactly what happened with my son.
Mhm.
Okay.
So it was very similar. I also had very similar mentors that gave me the same advice about advocating. You go with the honey first and then the vinegar.
okay, thank you. Let's talk about Jeremy's video. What did you think Jeremy did well?
Told the story with enough
Yeah.
emotion to gain empathy.
Yeah, it was emotional. And I connected with it because I'm also a parent raising my grandson. So I think that there's probably, I'm assuming and I'm hearing more and more that a lot of parents are raising their grandchildren. So it's not your plan, but it's life.
Yeah. Any other comments? And Jeremy has heard a lot of positive and negative comments on his video. So he's really open to honest feedback. So anything that you want to say in terms of either good things or constructive criticism, he's very open to hearing because he's probably heard it before. Just a little background on Jeremy's video. I wasn't there when the video was made, but with Jeremy, we did this at in a conference room or I can't.
It was an audiovisual room.
There's an audiovisual. Yeah, it was designed for recording. We did it at Seattle Children's Hospital. And Jeremy walked in with a bunch of notes about what he wanted to say, and those were basically taken away from him immediately. And we just said, we want you to be natural doing this. And what you see in the video, probably take number 8 or 9, maybe even 10. So it wasn't like he did this wonderful presentation on his first go. It takes practice. And that's one of the things that we talk about a lot in the workshop, is that it just takes practice. It takes practice on your own. It takes practice with family or people at work. The best practice, of course, is actually going out and doing it. But until you go out and practice it in some way and use this process, you really won't get good at it. And so, we tell people when they leave the workshop, when they come into the workshop, when you leave, you shouldn't expect that you're going to be an expert at this. It's something you have to practice. And Jeremy experienced that firsthand. Jeremy's presentation took 4 minutes and 54 seconds.
Yeah, I thought it was longer than the other dolls.
Yeah, it was much longer, almost 3 minutes longer. So he would have probably been cut off at some point. So let me ask you this: what could Jeremy have done to shorten his presentation but still be effective? Because this is the kind of thing you want to think about. You're actually preparing a presentation and you time yourself and you find out, oh, I'm at 3 minutes 50 seconds. How do I take out 50 seconds? So what could Jeremy have done differently?
I could see where if it goes longer, the message gets lost in the time. So you want to definitely be specific in your ask, whatever the request or what you're advocating for, is like from the notes is you're introducing yourself and then your story and then your ask or request. And then you want to hit that again at the end of, your time that you're allowed to talk. So I can see where that's really important. So the message doesn't get lost. And I think what I got from Jeremy is about more or less the struggle of, having this, I think if I remember, an 8-month-old granddaughter in the hospital and all the complications and just kind of being blind and have to struggle and navigate through this of what type of support and resources there would be for his granddaughter, and still struggling and advocating and finding resources that are a good fit.
Yes, I think he made his point really strongly. And Josie, in terms of, you just went over the steps that he talked about. Does everybody think Jeremy covered these steps pretty well?
I do. If you're saying I pretty much grasped what he was, what he was trying to get across, then I guess I got it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So the question then, and it's not something we have to answer now, but it is an important thing to think about. What I'm hearing is that you guys think Jeremy covered all these steps, and I think he did too. But he went almost 2 minutes over his allotted time, looking at a 3-minute time frame. So when you're thinking of your presentations and preparing and practicing, how do you get through all of this in 3 minutes? And that's something you have to think about.
Yeah, like what do you cut out?
Yeah. What do you cut out? Or what, Jeremy, do you have any thoughts about what you could have cut out?
I mean, I could cut out a few lines here and there, a couple of different sections. I could have condensed some of the things. I could have speeded up my speech a little bit. I could have not used as many of the pauses as I used. So, and realistically, what I could have done the best was sit and timed myself over and over again before I did this, which goes back to that point about practicing.
Yeah.
So last weekend I competed in a story slam, which is a storytelling competition, and the storytelling competition was based on 99-second stories. If you went over 99 seconds, you got disqualified. So you had to think about essentially every word. It was really interesting because it was such a good reminder of how important it is to make sure that you are only focusing on the things that really matter and really push the story forward. For here, there are things that I could have taken out that were important to me, but probably weren't as important to my listener. They weren't as important to the legislator or decision maker, and so I could have left those details out. These 2 daughters as a single father. To me, that helped.
Right. That's one thing I was thinking.
I probably wasn't important to that. That I did that to try to help make a connection, not that type of thing. But it probably wasn't important. So there were a lot of those little things that I would over and over again. I would keep cutting a few things out until it got to a realistic time frame.
Yeah, and that's just the kind of work that you have to do when you're practicing. That's why practice is so important, as Jeremy mentioned. He also mentioned, because that speech a little bit, is something that a lot of people comment about. I saw Darcy shaking her head. There's probably an agreement that some people, when they watch the video, it bothers them that he was speaking so deliberately that there were these long pauses in between things. Part of that you have to remember is that we took away, and so he hadn't practiced without the notes, and so he was sitting there trying to figure out what he's going to say next.
Yeah.
And he's also so he's trained to have those he's comfortable with the pauses and not saying and ah as he's trying to think about things. So
No, I
that's
think
part of it.
but both of them in their own ways like did a great job. But pausing, like depending on like where you're at, because it was longer, but like if you were able to have your notes and know that you only had 3 minutes, you would, like if you were testifying a hearing or something, you wouldn't have used pauses in that moment. And so I feel like it was very effective for like a video type thing or very conversational. And it knowing that it was take 8 or whatever, like or like that you're thinking of your story and tell it. I think it was powerful in its own right, but it's like trying to shorten it up, like for a hearing type setting, that you would have notes and just get to the point kind of thing, I think is the difference in both of those.
I feel like for sure the pauses and the cadence really lent itself to the emotionality of the entire thing, which really brought in the empathy. So in a conference type setting, I think would be absolutely like the people that talk very quietly, so everybody shuts up and listens.
Yeah.
I think that really played a good role, but you know, with our confines of the time constraints that we have in talking to our legislators or whoever, you know, for me, I would have cut out enough so that you could have kept some pauses or maybe cut pauses in half because some of them were pretty long, but I think they were important. I think that really conveys the emotion that you're trying to get across and gives a better connection with your audience. So I would have probably done a little bit of both, maybe taken a little bit out, a little bit of the content out, but still saved the emotional aspect of the entire thing.
Like we're half time, there's also things to get through, so I'm going to stop this, but I will say that Jeremy's video is, if nothing else, it's excellent because it gives us lots of things to talk about. And so it's been very good for that purpose. So let's move on. And we are back to you, Jeremy.
All right. Are you sharing the PowerPoint, or do you do that at this point?
You can't see it?
I cannot. I don't know if that's just.
Is anybody? You can't see it. Okay, here we go again. Let's try this. Great. Okay.
So what we're gonna talk about now that Liz is gonna bring up on the slides, able to be shared, are things to consider as you develop your ask. So as you're framing out what you want someone to know, I think we're on slide 8.
Yeah, I'm there. Here we go.
What is it that needs to change, and what's the challenge that's being faced? A few things to consider. And Adina and I both did this a little bit. We both did this in our own way, but differently. What's the challenge that's being faced? Is it likely that this problem or challenge matters to other people? And this is really about the difference between personal advocacy and systems advocacy. So does it matter to other people, or is it something I'm going to use the air quotes, only advocating for your child on? I mean, we all know that that's extremely important, but what we focus on with this workshop specifically is how to move from that personal advocacy to the systems advocacy. So are you advocating for a one-on-one para for your child during the child's IEP, or are you advocating for a fundamental change to the way in which paras are the need for a para is calculated within the school district for everyone? The difference between personal and systems advocacy is something that's going to affect more than just you and your child, and that's really where we're focusing on this. Second thing to consider as you're developing your ask for is, are there possible solutions for this issue, or is it too big to address? Is it some, and that goes, there's a couple of different aspects to that. The first is, are you talking to the right people about this at the right level? So are there possible solutions for this? Yes. Does it require you to implement a federal mandate or changes to the education system at the federal level? That's pretty big. You might not be able to tackle that 3-minute meeting with your local legislator or local school board. So make sure that the people that you're talking to and the way in which you're framing this up is the right size for what you're trying to accomplish at the right level. And then are you asking for more than just support or awareness? And this goes back to, in the format where we talk about specific asks that you're talking about, when you go to a legislator or you go to your local school board or the president of the PTA, asking for support or awareness is not really something that they can do anything with. They can't take action on that. So you leave them with a story that you've told about how important it is that we are more inclusive as a school, for example, and how neurotypical children benefit from interactions with children who are not neurotypical, and that it's for everyone involved, and we really want you to be aware of that, and that all, and here's my personal story about my child and how they did that. And then that person has no place to take that emotion, no way to take that and turn that into action. And so they don't know where to start. So when you're asking for something, make that a tangible ask. Give them the thing that you want them to do so they don't have to try to figure that out for themselves. It's much easier for them to go, yeah, I can fund a program for that. I can convene a panel for that, since that's what you're asking me for, instead of them walking away and going, that seems really important, and I don't know where to start with it. I don't know how to tackle that problem. So I ask for more than just support and awareness and really dial that in. Questions or thoughts on that so far?
Well, this is Debbie, and just I sit on the council, and that is a big issue when somebody comes forward. If you have a tangible ask, it's much easier for us to make a decision or move forward on it. But when we have to try to absorb it and come up with the answer, it's a real challenge. So that's a very good point.
Thank you.
I'd like to start picking up the pace a little bit, Jeremy.
Okay, sorry. Let's move on to the next slide. Things to consider when sharing your personal story. You have so much anger or frustration about this topic that it would be hard for you to talk in a constructive way. We've probably, I know I've been through this. Many times there are short stories that I won't share because I can't not be pissed off when I'm talking about it. And being pissed off when you're talking about it is not the right way to create empathy and make a connection and get people on your side. That's the anger part, the emotion part, the story about Kylie and finding out that she was blind. That moment hit me harder for some reason than any of her other diagnoses. That was the first time that I had cried since she was born, based on her diagnosis. I wouldn't have been able to tell that story in front of people if we had done that video 2 years earlier. I would have probably broken down and would have been on take 47 before I was able to actually get things together. So if you're in that, while the story is important, maybe you're not ready to tell it for that purpose yet. Give that some thought. I would encourage you, if you're in that space, to practice that before you get with someone. Yes, crying in front of a legislator might evoke emotion, but it's probably the emotions that you want to evoke. Your message is going to get lost. You're going to potentially have a really hard time getting them to do what you want to. Too worried about the fact that you're crying and not about what you're crying about. Do you feel comfortable sharing this information in public? And would your child or family feel comfortable with this? There are things that happen that maybe we just keep to ourselves that are awkward or embarrassing or disgusting or whatever it happens to be, that may just, or even point out something that maybe somebody doesn't want pointed out. You know, we've got some examples of that. I won't go into those, but just give that some thought before you share some of those stories with people. I think Lewis has an example that he shares a lot with around.
Yeah, just very quickly, I think what Jeremy is referring to is this. Their dad and father network, who when his child was born, he started his wife started a blog, basically talk about their experiences raising their child, and it sort of gave them an outlet. Excuse me. But their son was verbal, and he got to a certain age and understood what was going on. He asked them to stop because he didn't want to be publicly presented like they were doing. So he asked them to stop. Unfortunately, he was able to express that, and some children aren't. So you put yourself in their spot. Think about that. Are we ready for me to move on?
Yes, let's.
Okay. So in the chat, I put my name and email address for the purpose of a form that I'm going to talk about later. But I knew that when I was talking about it into the workshop, I wouldn't have a chance to put it in there. So it's there now. You can see it. The forms that Jeremy put in the chat earlier. This is what we normally have people when they go through the workshop, either in person or virtually, and we're doing giving them the opportunity to actually work through developing a story. These are the forms that we go through. And the exact questions that are on the forms are what you're seeing on these next set of slides. So you don't have to feel like you have to get the forms because you're seeing what we're going to talk about. So when we do the workshop in person or the full workshop even virtually, we want people to think really in big terms about what they want to do with their presentation. And we ask them to address some very big picture kind of questions. And the big picture questions are, what is the challenge or problem that you or your child is facing? So what is it that you want to have addressed? And as Jeremy talked about before, does this challenge affect other people? What is it specifically that you want to have changed? And who has the power to make that change? And that part about who has the power to make a change is something that you may not know right away. And it may involve some research on your part. Who do I need to talk to? And how do I get to them? Imagine that you may have to tell your story to 2 or 3 or more other people before you finally get to the person that can actually do something about what you want to have changed. And you have to understand that chain of command is something you may have to go through. If you skip the chain of command, you maybe get sent back to the bottom of the chain, and it all gets blown up because nobody at the bottom wants to help you because you went over their heads. Very specifically, what do you want your listener to do? In Jerry's case, he asked that the person he was talking to, who was a legislator, expand on the work that was done with the Down Syndrome Information Act and to apply that to give information to parents who have children with other diagnoses. So that's the specific thing he was looking for. So you have to be really clear, what is it you do? And then try to convey what's important to you and other families. So these are the really big picture questions we ask people to think about before they get into detail. Just ask them to really quick answers to. This doesn't involve really big picture. What do you want to have happen? And then we get into the and then the detail slide. So, on these next two slides, we go through the questions that we want people to actually take the worksheet that they have and write down exactly what it is they want to say in their presentation. And then after they finish this worksheet, we actually have them go into a one-on-one situation in a breakout room and actually say the words to somebody else, to actually do the presentation and to get feedback. We do the full workshop. It's oftentimes a situation where people can't get through the entire worksheet because they think about a lot. They're trying to put down exact words, what you can't get through it all. But we ask them to that they have prepared. So, but for your purposes, just to know what the questions are, this follows format slide that Jeremy talked about before. Introduce yourself, and in introducing yourself, decide how much you want to talk about you, yourself, you or your family. And it's oftentimes helpful to give them a little bit of information that will help understand the ask that you're going to make. I think in Jeremy's video or presentation, he talked about Kylie, and he's her grandfather, and she had certain disabilities. Just provided some foundation for the ask that he was going to make later. Trying to find a connection with the person. I think Jeremy talked before about maybe the person you're talking to is a veteran and you're a veteran, or maybe if it's a legislator, just the fact that you are one of their constituents, but try to find some way to connect with that person. And again, that may take some research on your part. State your request. And if you can state your request very clearly and very succinctly, and try to do it in 30 words or less. So again, that's that practice piece and fine-tuning your words so you can get that done in that really succinct amount of time. Let them know what it is that needs to change, to be improved or done differently. What is it that you want? This goes back to the worksheet we talked about. What are the things that you, on the big picture, want to have changed? And now you're going to specifically say what you want to have changed and say the exact words that convey that message to the person you're talking to. And now you tell your story. And so if you're using this worksheet that you have a copy of in the link, this is where you actually write the words down that tell your story, that connects to the ask that you're making. And as I mentioned before, this is where it becomes really hard for a lot of parents because they have so much to say. How can I convey everything that's happened to my child and to our family to this ask and put it down on paper in any kind of succinct way? And so it really takes some thought and probably several edits. And that's the benefit of getting the opportunity to practice with somebody, because they can give you feedback to say, you could have shortened this little piece right here, or that wasn't really necessary to say, or you repeated yourself. And then you can make edits. And that's the benefit of going through the workshop, is you get the chance to tell your story more than once after you've gotten feedback. And you can change things and edit and then practice again. If you can use a positive example, that's great. Now, I'll ask Jeremy to comment here because I think you've got an impression from his story that when he went to the hospital that day and he met with all those doctors, nothing positive happened for him that day. And for him, he couldn't find a positive example to speak about, but he was able to convey his message without having the person he was talking to feeling like they were to blame for anything. Jeremy, do you want to add to that?
Just that, yeah, I think that's the most important part. If you can't use a positive example, make sure that when you are talking to this decision maker, you're not making them feel as if you are holding them accountable for not having done something that somehow this is their fault. Right? I did in my example, I didn't say, if you had just expanded on this bill 6-8 years ago, I had the resources to help Kylie more, and now she doesn't have the resources that she needs because you didn't think about this, right? That would obviously have been a whole different message and a whole different messaging this. So find a way to not cast blame. Not only not on the person that you're talking to, preferably not casting blame in general, just because that thing's negative.
Yeah, thank you. Next step is, as we follow the process that we've been talking about, you need to explain why the request is important and beneficial to many people. When in Jeremy's video, he talked about all the many people that would benefit, children and adults that would benefit if they would receive information similar to the parents who have Downs, children with Downs. So they'd have that information early and upfront, and they would be able to work with it and not have to find their own. So talking about who would benefit and what the results could be that could be achieved. And then the last step, thanking your listener and reiterating your request. Jeremy made some nice transition statements when he did this. I believe it was something along the lines of, I want to thank you for the work that you did with the Down Syndrome Information Act, and I want to challenge you to continue on that good work. And he made his ask again. And so that was just a really nice way to connect the step about why it's important, and then asking again for what you're asking for. So this all takes, as we've talked about, practice. It takes doing it again and again, hopefully getting feedback from somebody before you actually have to do it. But those are the steps that we want you to learn. It's the process that we want to take you through. Are there questions that we can answer at this point? I know we've done this really, really fast, but we're hoping that it makes some sense. I know I'm sorry? Okay, so that's basically what we want to cover. The last slide is basically to, this says joining us, but we're joining you. So thank you for letting us join you. Again, the importance of practice is just something that you don't have to use this process. There are other processes that you could adapt or adopt for when you want to make presentations. This is one that we're presenting to you that we have found to be effective. But if you're going to use it, please practice. It will make you better at it. One of the forms that Jeremy put into the chat, or one of the links, was one called the Washington Statewide Leadership Initiative form. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with the Washington Statewide Leadership Initiative. It is a group of primarily nonprofits, but organizations that do work of serving families who have children with special healthcare needs, or families in general in some cases. And they try to provide opportunities for those parents to have leadership positions, or be able to speak on panels, or to fill out surveys, but to somehow have an opportunity to say something about their experience raising their children. The form that you were given, if you open it up through the link, we just want you to see the language. You don't have to send it back to me because this is all virtual. But if you wanted to be on their email list, just get a list of what those opportunities are, what those workshops are that people are presenting, so that you know that information. And if you decide that you want to become involved in some of the things that are offered, great. But by filling out the form, you would not be saying, I'm doing anything, or I want to do anything. I just want information coming to me. And there will be an email that will come to you. It's usually on a weekly basis, but to be perfectly honest with you, the person that does that at the Department of Health has been resigned to do COVID tracing, and I don't expect her back until March. So it may be that you wouldn't get an email until early next year. But if that is interesting to you, to on that mailing list to receive that information and those opportunities, just write to me using the email address that I put in the chat. And if you would give me your name and how to contact you, I'll pass that on to the Department of Health, and you'll be added to the list. Jeremy also put in the chat a link for a post evaluation. If you wouldn't mind filling that out and giving us feedback on this, we'd appreciate it. In the link, we do ask for some demographic information, and if you're not comfortable with providing that, that's okay, but it does help us to be able to report back to the state on who is it we've reached with this workshop. So that's all that I have to say, and we have a minute left. So Darcy and Shelley, thank you for inviting us. Josie and Debbie, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Join you. So Jeremy, anything you want to add before we say bye?
Just the importance of the emotional aspect and making that connection with your story. That's to me the difference between this format and so many other formats. Is it's really about the story aspect. It's really about making that emotional connection and helping people to understand and feel the journey that you've been on in a way that makes them want to help people. So I can't over stress that vulnerability and emotion and showing up in a way that helps them to understand what this journey is like is so much more important than charts and graphs and statistics.
Yeah. One of the things we often talk about in the workshop is what you might want to strive for is telling your story to somebody and having them go home to their family and over dinner with their family saying, somebody came and talked to me today and they told me this story and I can't get it out of my head. And that's what you shoot for.
There you are, right there.
You girls did good. I enjoyed it.
I thought it went
Good.
well. I thought it's too bad that we didn't do it longer and have the time to practice. I always hate the practicing because it's like
I did too.
plain but it's really important. But
Well, Darcy, we get to do it tomorrow. He's going to be on Informing Families.
oh, is he?
Yeah, he's supposed to be there for the advisory group part. Didn't you read your agenda?
No.
Hi, Zoe.
Yeah.
He's funny. He kept apologizing for all of the problems. And so I just messaged him back and I'm like, we don't have any naked Zoom bombers. And technical difficulties are more the norm than not. So we're good. And I definitely saw when he read it because he laughed.
That's just so funny because everything's gone wrong this week. My computer crashed. My car the light came on. This is just a normal day for me this week.
Yeah.
Spent $1,800 on Sydney's car this week.
Yeah. I'm hoping
It.
to get mine tomorrow.
What's that?
What happened to her car?
It's just, well, the brakes just started squealing like the brakes do when they need new brake pads. And so we took it in and it was only the left front side that needed it. And the other side still had like 60% left. So it had a stuck caliper. So we had to replace the caliper and they turned the rotors and then we needed new shocks and struts on all of the back. And it just nickeled and dimed us to death.
Cha-ching.
Right.
Ching.
Well, and it's like last time we took the van in because we knew it needed new brakes. That was $1,200. So I told Carlos, I said, you know what happened last time? How much do you think they're going to tell us this time? And he goes, I don't know, 500. And I'm like, I'm thinking probably only 4. I'm like, it's price has gone up for brakes, but it shouldn't be that bad. And then they came back with like $1,788 and some change. And I about fell out of my chair.
Yeah.
And then it's like, so I asked online, if anybody, but then it's like, then I got to drive it somewhere else. So I have to get a ride there and then drive it somewhere else and then get picked up from there and then come back. And then, I'm just like, you know what? I don't have time.
No.
So I just let him do it and probably spent a lot more money than we needed to, but it's Sydney's car. So I split it with her. So we each paid half.
Oh,
So
that's nice.
yeah.
That's
But
nice.
then we got the flooring. I spent $900 on flooring for the basement yesterday. And then
Ooh.
Sydney, that's what she dropped on her foot, an entire box of it, and broke her toe in 2 places. And
Oh.
now she had just called back in after her COVID testing saying, she was good to go for her Wednesday shift.
Mhm.
And then she had to call and tell him, doctor said no, that she has to be off of it for a week. So
New problem.
yeah. So where did you record it to?
It's probably recording on my desktop. I don't know.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll look at that and we can. What's that?
Did you record it too, or did you?
No,
Okay.
I didn't because you already had. So